The biggest mistake is just treating the QME appointment like it's anything else. Like it's having a laissez-faire attitude towards, oh, it's just an evaluation. It's just another doctor. It's not a big deal. And that includes everything from picking the right doctor or even the preparation for it. Preparation doesn't mean just actually reading what a QME is, but like actually preparing for it. Like thinking about what body parts are involved in your case, trying to recall your medical history, understanding the scope of what the evaluation's supposed to be about, what the doctor is supposed to be doing to do their job.
Hey, it's Carmen from More Comp Talk podcast, and I'm excited to invite you to tune in for our second part of our webinar series. If you've missed out of the first part, you want to go check that one out, so this one makes even more sense. But if you don't have the time, it's also cool because here's a quick snippet of what you're going to be expecting on this next episode. So, tell you what, once a month, we host this monthly webinar, and last month's webinar was truly focused on the importance of a qualified medical evaluation. So if you're new to the workers' comp system, then it's crucial for you to understand this one step that happens throughout the workers' comp case, right? In this part, the Qualified Medical Evaluator, or for short, QME, we talk about why it's important and when you're going to actually bump into this part of the system within your claims. So Bilal breaks it all down for us to understand why you can't mess this one particular part. And the most important part is how do you deal with it once you're in it? How do you best prepare for it? This episode is jam-packed with a lot of information that you're not going to want to miss, especially if you haven't had your qualified medical evaluation yet, because this one thing can determine a lot for your entire case. So if you missed part one, make sure you go check that one out. That is what we kind of shared with you, why it's important and why you need it, etc. But this one truly dives deep into when do you expect this QME, how do you best prepare for it, and how do you become a very successful person in your QME process, and what to expect. What does the court look like? What does this mean? How is it handled? It has a lot of information. So make sure you check that one out. And here, without further ado, is our second part of our Webinar 6 series. So I have a question for you, Bilal. If someone just opened up a workers' comp claim, they're just starting the system, where in a timeline would they see a qualified medical evaluator? Like, would this be right at the beginning, or how does this fit into a claims timeline?
Sure. So QMEs can show up in a case at any time. It just depends on who requests it and when and why. There are probably two of the very most common scenarios in which case, a QME is used. And that's either after the insurance company has just flat out denied liability for the case, meaning we're not going to provide you any medical treatment. We're not going to provide you any benefits. The case is just over. We disagree with the fact that you've been injured and we're not going to help you. That's usually scenario number one. Scenario number two is usually when there is a bad treating physician report. When someone gets injured, they're sent to the preferred workers' comp industrial clinic for the insurance company, which they're preferred for a reason, right? They're usually not going to be on the injured worker's side. Typically, the industrial clinic is incentivized in order to stay within the medical network for the insurance carrier to limit the costs of claims and to get you back as work as soon as possible, which means you probably have a disagreement with the direction that the treating physician is going, in which case you would want to request a QME. So those two issues pop up fast. Insurance companies only have 90 days to make a decision about liability for a workers' comp case. And usually when you don't get good vibes from your treating physician, it's pretty fast. I think it's very rare that someone would be with a treating physician they hate for 2 years and then decide, hey, this person's been awful to me for 2 years, so I want to get a QME. Usually it's pretty quick that I think you would do those things. And strategically, it benefits you to get a QME faster because of your ability to pick the panel specialty as well, which really matters.
Okay, so can you tell me a little bit about what a QME does positively to a case, to a claim, to someone that is trying to fight the system? How does the QME have this high impact? What's the positivity behind it?
So when we talk about what happens in workers' comp, there's, how decisions are made. There is a administrative law judge. The judge is not by any means a medical expert. Neither are we. The doctors are the medical experts. And so really when the judges make decisions about case, they're relying on the medical experts, at least as far as medical issues are concerned. And typically what we see is that the treating doctors, the person that you see for your medication, your injections, whatever it is, um, their job is to treat you. And that's what they're good at, to the extent they're authorized to by utilization review, which is, another topic we talked about. But, their primary focus is there to, give you the care you need to get better, not to write reports. And so when we think about QMEs being the evaluators in work comp cases, their sole job is to write reports and evaluate you. And so when we're talking about what the judge will rely on in making decisions about your case, typically it's the QME report that carries the most weight because their whole entire existence is to review all your medical records and write thorough narrative reports about everything they're supposed to. And so when we talk about how important the QMEs are, we're really talking about, them kind of holding the life of your case in their hands.
Yeah.
If they write a really bad report for you, sometimes you can get the primary treating physician to write a rebuttal report to the QME, and there's some good doctors that will spend the time to do that. But sometimes it's very difficult to get a report from the treating physician to compete with the QME report. And all things created equal, usually it's the QME report that the judge will be relying on because it's typically much more thorough. And again, when we're talking about the issues, we're talking about whether or not you even have a case,
Right.
whether you should be collecting temporary disability benefits or not, whether or not you're entitled to any permanent disability for your injuries or future medical care and what body parts are involved. So these are all like major, major, major issues for your workers' compensation case that oftentimes the QME is the person that actually decides.
Okay, so that makes sense. Obviously, after the way that the timeline of the QME was set out in the actual presentation, the part where it says your benefits and case direction make total sense now, because depending on what that doctor reports or where this leads, it's where your case heads, right? So can we talk a little bit about what does an injured worker want to see in their QME report? Obviously, we need to be accurate with pinpointing what is hurting us and be truthful about what's happening to our body. But what does the QME look for?
So I think, there's not a one size fits all approach to QMEs. Some people, they want their QME to give them the most permanent disability possible, the most work restrictions, the most significant report medically and financially for them so that this can be kind of their retirement case, or so that they can move on with life and go do something else, or so even just so that, if they're really suffering, that everything that they're legally entitled to is provided to them. There's other people who want to minimize their injuries. We deal a lot with police officers and firefighters. And, the firefighters in particular, they get beat up. I think they lift a lot more heavy equipment, deal with a lot more intense stuff than police would be doing day to day, I think, at least what I see. And so a lot of firefighters come to us with minor injuries. And these minor injuries still keep them off of work for a little bit, still give them some trouble. They still have aches and pains and problems after medical treatment's done. But they don't want to be on retirement. They don't want to be forced out of their job. Maybe they're just on the fire department for 2 years and they want to continue working for the next 18 years. And so they want the QME to essentially, kind of downplay the scope of their limitations and restrictions and disabilities so that they can continue on back to work. But generally, you want to see a QME report that supports whatever it is that you would like to accomplish with your case, provided, of course, that when things like permanent disability or benefits are at issue, that the QME is on your side for those things, that the QME is turning every stone. They're addressing every body part. They're ensuring that they're giving you the most accurate permanent disability rating possible. And so really, I think, at least what we do at our firm is, oftentimes we'll discuss what the QME is with our clients and we'll talk about what it is the outcome they're looking for. And when we're preparing for the QME evaluation, we may write a cover letter, the QME kind of indicating what our theory of the case is and what we'd like to see happen. Obviously, the defense is going to write theirs too, but I think it's critical that there's some level of direction that you're hoping to get and hoping to convey to the QME when you go there. That way, to the extent possible, you can get a report from the QME that'll support you.
Yeah, so it seems like QMEs are pretty heavy and important within a workers' comp claim. I do want to invite you to reach out, take advantage of the webinar. So you can either call us. We're going to be putting the phone number on the screen where you guys can call us directly to the 510-686-6008. Or you can also on the chat let us know that you're interested in this priority level strategy that is going to be allowing you to speak about your case and then kind of guiding you as to what you can do and how we can help. And then if you do want to have that conversation on a video chat, then you can do so as well on the chats and just let the teams know, or you can click on the link that's showing up on the screen right now. So Bilal, we've talked about the positivity about the QME. Now let's get to the most important part about this webinar. And that is that one QME mistake that can kill your entire claim, just like this. It sucks. It happens. So I really want us to pinpoint the mistake in plain language. When someone mishandles their QME as a lawyer, and you deal with this constantly on a daily basis, what is that one mistake that injured workers do that you're just like, oh, there goes the case?
I mean, there's a lot, to be honest. There's probably more than one if I really wanted to dig in. The reality of it is the biggest mistake I see is going to the wrong QME. That is by far the biggest mistake that I see happen. A lot of clients. Well, let me start with this. When you go to a QME, generally on a case, you get one QME. If there's multiple body parts and systems involved in a case, you get more than one QME, right? You get, like, let's say you have a back injury. You don't get to see a chiropractic QME, an orthopedic QME, and a pain medicine QME. You'll get one of those specialties because all of them are qualified to address your back injury. If you have, for example, a back injury and you have your diabetes has been aggravated because of your back injury and complications from treatment and such, you would need to see not only, for example, orthopedic QME or pain medicine QME, you need to see an internist as well in QME. So you get to see different QMEs for different body parts and systems to the extent they're there. To the extent they're not, you get one. Which means if you pick that one QME and you pick the wrong QME, your whole case is going to be tanked.
Yeah.
We see this a lot. A lot of clients come to us early on in the case, which is great because we can help them through that process and we can pick the QME for them. Other times, a lot of people come to us because they feel like they got a really bad QME. And once that is in motion, it's very hard to get rid of it. There's tools that we can use to try to either cross-examine the doctor, question the doctor, or even get the doctor kicked off of the case in certain circumstances. But those aren't for sure things. And so oftentimes, if you do have a bad QME, it can be very difficult to deal with that throughout the rest of the case. And so a lot of people don't understand kind of the gamesmanship that goes on in selection of the QME. They don't understand that there's certain QMEs that have affiliations with certain medical practices that are insurance oriented. There's QMEs that are extremely conservative, regardless of whether or not they have medical practice that has some financial incentive to please insurance companies. And so you have to know what you're getting into. You have to know the right doctor you're picking. You have to know the right specialty.
Yeah.
Just a little tidbit. One of the most common problems I see is people who pick orthopedic QMEs when they go and they get injured because they have a physical injury to their bones, joints, or ligaments, and they think that is going to be the most appropriate given their medical specialty. Where in reality is for a back injury, typically we see chiropractic or pain medicine doctors giving the most favorable reports. And that just happens to be because I think pain medicine doctors tend to be more liberally oriented towards injured workers, look at things more holistically. And chiropractors are the same thing. So, we typically see that there's certain doctors and certain specialties that are more favorable to the injured worker, and picking the wrong one, picking the wrong doctor could be catastrophic for your case.
Right. I mean, there's, like you mentioned, a lot of big one mistake that can derail your entire case. How about treating a QME doctor as a normal doctor visit and as a routine? So, and I've seen this where the patients are very impatient, and unfortunately, they tend to be rude with the QME because it's like, oh, you had me waiting outside. thinking that you were supposed to be touched, seen. Let's say I have an injury in my hand. You're expecting the person or the QME to truly take a look at your hand and try to tell you, does this hurt? Does that hurt? I mean, treating the QME like a routine doctor visit. Can you tell us why this hurts?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is ultimately what I was trying to get at, with my comment as well is, it's really the biggest mistake is just treating the QME appointment like it's anything else. Like it's, having a laissez-faire attitude towards, oh, it's just an evaluation. It's just another doctor. It's not a big deal. And that includes everything from picking the right doctor, like I was spending time discussing, or even the preparation for it. And preparation doesn't mean just actually, reading what a QME is, but like actually preparing for it. Like thinking about what body parts are involved in your case, trying to recall your medical history, understanding, the scope of what the evaluation's supposed to be about, what the doctor is supposed to be doing to do their job, and really getting yourself prepared so that when you go in, you know what to expect. 2, if possible, you can hold the doctor accountable. And 3, you know what's going to come afterwards. And so really, not just treating the QME evaluation like it's just another evaluation in your case and it's not a big deal because, really it's everything, and we've seen clients who have picked really poor QMEs and they haven't really prepared. They go to the evaluation and the doctor railroads them and there's really not much, if anything, that can be done about it. And it's really unfortunate. So, and I get it, there's a lot of people who don't understand this stuff. It certainly took me a while, even practicing workers' compensation law, to kind of understand the game that goes into the QMEs themselves.
Right. What about deadlines? Can you talk a little bit about the deadlines that happen within QME? Because I think there's also pitfalls that come from missing deadlines or not going to your appointment,
Of course. When we talk about the QME responsibilities of the doctor themselves, we talked about their evaluation timelines, right? When they can see you. We talked about when their reports are due. After an initial evaluation, the report needs to be done within 30 days. If it's a supplemental report, meaning additional information was provided to the doctor after the evaluation, to write a follow-up report. Common example of this is you see someone who's gone to an evaluation. The doctor does an evaluation and says, hey, this person had an MRI that I want to see before I write my final report. Or, hey, I think this person needs a MRI before I write a final report. Person gets the MRI, or the MRI is provided to the QME evaluator. The QME then writes a supplemental report addressing their findings. When you have a supplemental report, it's due within 60 days. So there's a timeline. Initial evaluation is 30 days. Supplemental report is 60 days. Now, if the doctor misses the evaluation report deadline, technically you're allowed to replace them. You're allowed to kick them off the case. So that is an important deadline to keep in mind. If you saw the doctor, it's been 62 days since your evaluation, they haven't written a report, that would be grounds to actually replace the QME. So if you got a bad doctor, keep tabs on that. The QME process itself does have strict timelines for when you request the QME panel, which you have to do depending on the type of issue you're dealing with, whether it's a claim denial or an objection to a treating physician report. But afterwards, really, once a QME is on a case, if they're late for things like supplemental reports, it's very hard to get rid of them. The judges will typically give them quite a bit of leeway. The more involved they are in a case for a longer period of time, it becomes harder and harder to replace them, depending on what's going on in the case.
Right. Okay. So these are very important details that we want you to take into consideration. Again, the insurance company is not going to tell you this. They're going to be like, oh, too bad, so sad, you missed it, or you didn't say X, Y, and Z was hurting as well, so that's not on the report. We did mention it earlier in the slides. If you guys were able to read some of the slides, there is this part right here that it says, if it's not in the record, it may not exist to the evaluator, which is why it's important for you guys to truly pay attention to this appointment of the Qualified Medical Evaluator. We've actually made it easier for them, Bilal. The entire team has created a checklist that if you registered through our webinar registration, you're going to get in an email. It's this entire checklist that's going to help kind of make sure you cross all the T's and dot all the I's and make sure that you really are on a winning strategy, I guess you can say, for the opportunity to truly be able to be successful in your claims. So, dates, obviously we talked about this, Bilal, knowing every deadline, setting alerts. I don't know, if you are a hard sleeper, make sure you put like 10 alarms, like make sure you have your friends sleep over so that they can wake you up. Obviously confirming that, your doctor matches your injuries, because that'd be so hilarious if you are, dealing with a foot issue and you end up getting a hand doctor and it's just like, what? Completely different. Obviously, there's a lot of documents that go into place as well. So I think it's important to know what documents you need to take. Keep your story straight. They forget about what they said in the first time. So storylines and just knowing that your story sticks and that it's the same is also very important. So yes, we're going to be sending everyone this checklist on an email for those of you that want it. Well, there you have it. Part 2 of our Webinar 6 series here in the WorkComp Talk podcast. If you want to join one of these live webinars, then you're not going to want to miss next month's webinar. It's going to be held on December 3rd, right at midday during lunchtime if you're working. So that way you can watch it directly from home, get your questions ready, and make sure that you join it so you get to ask those burning questions that keep you up at night. So I hope you get to join us for next episode, because on Webinar 6, Part 3, we are going to be discussing what happens when you've already had this QME, or what happens if you screwed up the QME, how can you fix it, and it dives into what the final stages of a QME does for your case. Where does this lead your settlement to? How impactful is the rating that you get within the Qualified Medical Evaluation? What does the doctor do? What can you do to support it? And once again, if you've had the appointment already, how can you make sure that you are not getting a lowball offer? And just, it's filled with a lot of more information you're not going to want to miss. So I hope you get to catch this next episode. If you haven't subscribed yet and are watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit that bell notification. That way we know that you are watching and we can continue to create more content for you. And if you're listening to on your favorite podcast app, also make sure you subscribe so that way you get notified every time we upload new content, which is exactly once a week. I hope to catch you on the next episode of WorkComp Talk. My name is Carmen. Thank you for joining me. If you guys want to scan the QR code, it'll take you directly to the priority line bypass, and it'll connect you directly with one of our intake specialists. You can also call the office and the phone number that's going to be on the screen as well.